I think that what we're seeing now is a situation where almost all new services are delivered via the cloud. I think that it's actually now very rare to find a service that isn't cloud based. And I actually saw some data from Gartner that said 85% of international companies are now orientating like all of their services are cloud first. So it's not just that we're talking about cloud as a service; it's services from service companies are delivered using the cloud as a basic infrastructure. So it's kind of ubiquitous now. Spending on cloud has gone up about 22% in the last year. So I think that this is really just how tech is organized today, but that also means that that's how services are delivered today.
Yeah, I would not disagree with anything Mark said. One of the things that we've been tracking within my own company is the extent to which companies are prioritizing cloud as a means of both delivering services as well as procuring services. One of the things that I think is most telling is that a survey that we conducted recently amongst enterprises indicates that going into 2025, cloud-based technologies will be the key watchword in terms of what enterprises are looking for when they're procuring services from provider and IT services and business process outsourcing. We're also seeing that within the scope of enterprises and enterprise IT departments, the demand for cloud-based services is probably stronger than any other technology suite that's out there. So there can be no two ways about it. The ubiquitous nature of the cloud is very much an important factor for companies across the board. It doesn't matter what the sector, it doesn't matter what the country. The bottom line is that this is seen to be the most robust technology, the most secure technology, and the one that's going to ensure, I would say, the best levels of business continuity out there.
Yeah, and I would add maybe two additional points there. Number one is the most important one that everyone worries about, and that's what your CFO is thinking. Cost. If you remember, go back a decade or so, try to launch a new service or a new business. You needed to invest. You needed equipment. You needed a data center. You had to spend a lot of money up front. Now you can pretty much just pay as you go for all of the storage, all of the computing power that you need. So you can test out a new service or a new idea or even launch a new business now without any of that upfront cost and really just sort of launch it as a pay as you go thing. And secondly, is around innovation and upgrades and development. Because if you've got your tech kind of organized more locally, I mean, I can remember when I worked in a bank, we had server rooms inside the bank. And now that would kind of be unthinkable that in a central London office you'd have all of the bank's systems. But if you've got a situation like that, then that also means you're managing all of the upgrades, all the virus checking, all the patches, and then when you do see some major innovation come along inside your industry, you have to spend on trying to take advantage of it. Whereas if you have already worked with a cloud provider to actually put all of your operational systems into the cloud, when something like quantum computing arrives, you just need to upgrade your systems or upgrade your package. So you're opening yourself up to innovation and upgrades very easily, and you're not having to spend up front.
That's right. The agility that the cloud brings to the table should not be underestimated. And it's funny because Mark and I were reading each other's minds. I think I was actually thinking back to the days when you would find these massive server rooms in places like central London or maybe central New York. The level of risk that comes with a situation with these types of premise-based operations is massive. And I go back to my point about business continuity and de-risking IT, de-risking operations. This is something that the cloud does in spades. And certainly, I think one of the key reasons why we're seeing continued uptake, in addition to the innovation that Mark just talked about. I think, is definitely getting a dose of reality in terms of what decision makers are considering when they're talking about implementations. There can be no question about the fact that this technology has come quite a long way. 2 years ago, in fact, I think it was around this time 2 years ago when ChatGPT had its first launch, it became part of the mainstream discussion. And there were a lot of 40,000-foot views about what AI meant, about what the implications of AI were. Right now, what I think is most important 2 years on is that we're seeing genuine use cases about where AI can be applied. We're actually seeing both vertical use cases, we're seeing functional use cases, but at the end of the day, we're now seeing about how this technology can actually be used in not just a cool technology perspective, but a practical technology perspective. And this is driving, I think, maybe a bit of a change in terms of the narrative about how it's going to be used, how it's going to be applied, where the investments around AI are going to go. I can tell you that over the course of the past 6 months, within the scope of the areas that I cover, with some of these real life use cases that are coming to the forefront, we're seeing a bit of a shift in direction in regards to what businesses are thinking about where AI can be used. We're not talking about massive job losses anymore. What we're talking about is AI being used to enhance people at work. What can tools be done? What tools can be used that are AI driven that are actually going to bring efficiencies to the table to help individuals that are performing all sorts of different tasks do these tasks faster and better and more effectively?
Yeah, and I would entirely agree. I think that what we saw was 2 years ago when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, that did mean that the general public kind of woke up to AI, and that was really a game changer because that changed expectations of people that were outside research businesses that had already been exploring this, and so we got a lot of interaction and media coverage in 2023 saying it was going to change the world. But I think that what really happened in 2024 was we matured a lot. We realized how much training large language models really need to make it work. And so all of those kind of headlines from 23 that were suggesting you can replace huge chunks of your company with AI bots, suddenly there's a reality. And like Peter was saying, we realized, look, this is a tool. It's very powerful. It can do a lot, but it's not going to replace your entire workforce.
Yeah, I couldn't add anything more to that. I think it's spot on.
I think it's a really exciting trend, and I think that what we're really talking about here, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the terminology, this is the idea that we can have autonomous assistants that are working on our behalf and powered by AI. And I think that we've all seen digital assistants in our personal life. A lot of us use Siri and Alexa and tools like that, but they're not very clever. They're in fact they're pretty dumb. They can switch on the lights, they can play Brian Adams if you want to listen to some music, but they're not making decisions on your behalf or spending on your behalf at the moment. And that's really what I think we're about to see as agentic AI becomes more common. Certainly within the enterprise, you should be looking at an environment where everybody can have a group of assistants helping you directly. So everybody at every level can effectively become a manager because you have a team of digital assistants that can be going out there and helping. And that could be someone who's involved in coding can actually have some assistants that are doing the basic kind of grunt work, and you are almost like an editor improving it and checking it. Or in customer service, for example, we all know that for customer service to work well, you need people who really understand products and really understand how to talk to people. But if you can sort of get people up to speed much faster by giving them that kind of digital assistance, so there is always someone there with you, even though they're a digital assistant, but they know the products inside out, so they can offer that kind of help. Then you can really see that we're talking about a big boost in both efficiency and productivity, sort of within the enterprise.
Yeah, and that boost in productivity and efficiency is going to result in stickier relationships between employees and their companies. One of the things that always strikes me is the ongoing discussion for years now on LinkedIn about employee burnout, about mental health in the workplace. And I think it's because there's all sorts of different roles out there that legacy systems just don't permit an ease of doing the job. I don't think there's an ease of efficiency in terms of being able to get things done, especially when it seems that pressures from the top are more than they've ever been. What Mark refers to in terms of digital assistants being able to help employees or potentially even consumers in terms of what they need to know, being able to provide them with that level of touch point in regards to being able to do their job better or to purchase better or to select a product or service better is going to be a game changer. And let's be very clear, this technology is real. In fact, yesterday I had a demonstration from a company, it's a startup in California, that was showing me a digital assistant. I ran through it for the course of about 45 minutes and I was really blown away. Now, you take a company like that and you multiply it out potentially by the dozens or the hundreds. This is going to become very mainstream very quickly once the technology hits, once the rubber hits the road in terms of people accepting it, people wanting to use it, people understanding how well it works. Mark made a really good point about Siri or Alexa. I mean, those, as far as I'm concerned, were party games. Those were little tricks people would be amused with for 5 minutes. I personally have never used any of those because I just didn't see the point. I can turn the lights on myself. I can turn on a Bryan Adams song myself. But with a digital assistant that's fully equipped, that is intelligent, that is dexterous, that will help me do my job better. That will help anybody in the workplace do their job better. It'll help a consumer be able to buy easier, and it'll, if it's done properly, will cement a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the important thing is that these assistants are going to learn. They're going to become more personalized, so they will understand you as a consumer. And so, if we're talking about services like Alexa from Amazon, instead of just asking it to perform actions, you should be able to say, I want to go to Paris for Christmas. If you can find a way that I can get there for less than $500, then just go ahead and book it. And so then you should just expect your assistant to constantly be searching for deals. When it finds a deal, it just books it and locks you in. So, there's this kind of decision making that I think we're about to see. And I think that that's important, that what we're talking about users that are consumers here. So consumer technology is almost kind of driving this and normalizing it within the enterprise. Because quite often it's been the other way around. We've seen enterprises talking about how they're innovative and they're using all this new technology, and they're always far ahead of what consumers will accept. But I think this time we're going to see that stuff like AI. ChatGPT alone has hundreds of millions of regular users, and so I think that we're really seeing that consumers are having their expectations raised for these kind of technologies. And once you start getting consumers understanding what agentic AI and having digital assistants really means, then I think you'll have every company director going, well, why don't we have this inside our business as well?
Yeah, and as this technology moves forward, as more of these company directors look to try and deploy these types of technologies within their organizations to render the greater efficiencies as it relates to operations, you can expect that certainly the demand will be there. But I have no doubt in my mind that there's going to be a plethora of options out there, some that will be perhaps more across the board, some that will be vertically focused. But the future is looking very good for agentic AI as far as I'm concerned. So I was watching a news clip from Channel 4 News in the UK a couple of days ago on YouTube, and it was an interview with the well-known actress Kate Blanchett, who was talking a little bit about the requirements around AI governance, what this means for society, the fact that AI, the development of AI is moving very quickly. As Kate said, in her opinion, it's moving a little bit too quickly for comfort in a lot of cases. And to that end, I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of tire kicking around what AI governance means. A lot of this, I think, will be driven eventually by regulation in different jurisdictions, such as the European Union, perhaps the US, Canada, Australia. But the reality is, there's going to be an expectation. I think a lot of different organizations and compliance departments that feel that they're going to need to be taking this into account sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think that it's inevitable that organizations are going to have policies and rules around how it's used. Because I think that, again, if you go back in time, then I think the CIO role within organizations was much more powerful. Now it almost feels like the head of technology provides people within the organization with a link to the outside world, almost like a fat pipe to the internet. And then the individual business lines within the business just kind of take responsibility for buying their own software or buying their own systems. Often it's just cloud-based systems. Even your most basic business software, like Microsoft 365, is just nowadays it's just a cloud-based system. So it certainly seems that companies have kind of gone down that path of pushing all of the regulation of all the software systems to the individual business managers at the expense of the CTO or the CIO. But it seems now that they really do actually have a role to play here in creating a sort of general framework for how is everybody in an organization going to use AI, and what is a safe use of AI for our business, and where could it go wrong. And there's also sort of different areas as well, such as like using AI to improve security, network security. So I think that you're going to see like where can we use this proactively within the business, but then also for areas of the business that take responsibility for their own use of technology. I think you'll have to have some sort of overarching policy around how are you using it, and how do we avoid this turning into a mess.
The need for safeguards is real because in organizations, and it doesn't matter what the sector, doesn't matter what the country, doesn't matter what the size of the business, the potential for cowboy behavior, for a Wild West atmosphere is huge with AI. And having some type of parameters around what is seen as ethical, what is seen as right versus wrong, what it should be used for, what it should not be used for, is an absolute requirement. And I think Mark will agree with me. The challenge, I believe, is going to be finding the requisite subject matter experts that will be able to take on some type of a compliance role within organizations, because we're talking literally hundreds of thousands of businesses that are going to be requiring this type of safeguard behavior. Now, it's very easy for a regulatory body, an overarching regulatory body, to designate that by 2027, for example, every business is going to need to have in place these safeguards. Well, you've got to find somebody to administrate it and to enforce it. And I think that's going to be very, very challenging. As we know, compliance departments are overwrought already with all the regulations they need to deal with. Adding on another layer of complexity, especially around a technology that is relatively nascent and we don't have a lot of understanding around where it's potentially going to go, will make it even more challenging.
Yeah, and I think Peter just mentioned a couple of points that are really valid there, both regulation, but also compliance to regulation. I think that you can, to give a simple example of where we're going and why this needs some sort of governance or control. You can think of the human resources function in most companies, and this cuts across all industries. Now, if you're trying to apply for a job, there's probably no human actually scanning your initial application for that job. You're being entirely judged and screened based on the information that you've supplied on your application. And if you can get through that initial check, quite often now there's even like a second check where you can do a sort of test or some sort of initial interaction. And again, that's all entirely automated. So, the company is screening you and giving you a basic test without any human in the HR department ever sort of making a decision about whether you're a good fit for the company or not. So who is defining those tests and those rules and the screening algorithms? Are they being checked for bias? Are they entirely basing their decision based on where you live or what education you've got or what college you went to. So that there's a lot of stuff there that we're now seeing automated and with AI based decisions, where we know that a lot of the training data that has been used on these AI systems has itself been very biased. So are we just kind of like perpetuating bad data and bad decisions into these systems? This is exactly why we need to sort of step back and think about this. If we are automating our decision making in this way, then what kind of governance and controls have we got around it? Because if you don't do it now, then the regulator and the government will be after you in a couple of years. I think that this is interesting because normally we think about disinformation as something that we've all seen in politics over the past few years. Politicians have become experts at pushing some information out around their rivals. And even if it's not necessarily true, as long as it goes viral, it helps them. And so this is a particular feature of social media that I think it's become quite problematic in politics. But I wrote about this recently because I saw Gartner actually suggesting that this is going to be one of the top enterprise technology trends in 2025. And I thought, well, that seems odd, because I thought that we were talking about politics. But when I started looking at it more and more, it seems that there is deliberate disinformation around corporate brands. And if you look online at discussions around products or brands, there is misinformation all over the place. But we know about bad information. This is people that are mistaken, people that just don't like a product. So this is not like an actual kind of disinformation campaign. What I think we're seeing here is almost like corporate sabotage online becoming a problem. And I think that this will only get worse as we see AI audio and video becoming much more powerful and people being able to easily clone the voice of a chief executive of a rival brand saying something outrageous, but then leaking it out onto Twitter. And so I think this is something that companies, it's kind of gone under the radar, but it's something we've all experienced in the news, but I think it's about to become a corporate problem as well.
The potential for corporate abuse of misinformation is massive right now, or disinformation. Look, at the end of the day, we've already seen a very strong track record in how this has impacted politics. I don't think there should be any question that any type of an enterprise should be looking to try and face down disinformation as it relates to their own brand. Mark used a really good example there about cloning voices, the capacity to easily clone a profile on social media of a leading executive, to clone a corporate website or a screenshot of a corporate website with information is very much out there. We're facing a lot of issues in terms of the refusal of many social networks to actively or correctly police what's being put up on their networks, to take down disinformation when it comes to politics. The same will apply to enterprises as well. And as it relates to some of these different challenges, this is again going to put a whole new layer of complexity on enterprises to defend themselves against this, to track disinformation, to identify it, and to make sure that it is corrected as quickly as possible. We've all heard about what has been referred to as war rooms or crisis management. This is going to take on a whole new level of complexity as we move into corporate disinformation, because we all know the impact that it's had politically. Just imagine what it's going to have on consumers when they're being asked to pick a different product or a service, and they're being subjected to a bombardment potentially of information that is just simply false.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can easily imagine situations here where publicly traded companies especially can see their share price move very quickly when there's some bad news. So the temptation is there for bad actors to short sell a publicly traded company and then leak out some negative information about that company, watch the share price crash 20%, and then just clean up at the end of the day when the real news comes out. I think that one of the things related to this that is also problematic is that there's, especially over the last decade, become a general distrust of many media brands. And so, it would be very hard for, if some negative news about a company goes viral, for everybody from the New York Times to the BBC to CNN to start saying online, this is not true, this is not real. Because there's just now so many people that believe their social networks before major media outlets. So it's becoming something that I'm not sitting here with an answer for it, but I think that it's something that major brands have got to be aware of, and definitely sort of think in terms of how they set up their technology and how they communicate.
No, 100% agree. This is not something that's going to go away. We can't close our eyes and plug our ears and pretend that this isn't happening. This is very much happening. And all it needs, you just need to do a few quick Google searches about corporate disinformation, and you'll find some very scary results, not just in terms of what's being said, but as Mark alluded to, in terms of the impact that it actually has on companies, thereby impacting people's jobs.